Most people would assume the longest-running mining lease in Western Australia would be near the historic gold mining town of Kalgoorlie. But in fact, it's at Greenbushes in the southwest, where a one-time tin mining tenement has been taken over by the world's biggest producer of lithium minerals. The Talison mine is on a 100 square kilometre lease, which includes more than 20 old open-cut pits and dams, which over more than a century have evolved into wetlands, providing habitat for growing populations of fish and insects and attracting rare and endangered bird life. Here's Sean Murphy.
Ecologist Pia Christensen is surveying waterbirds. But what makes these wetlands unique is that they're man-made. They were once open-cut pits for the tin mining industry at Greenbushes in Western Australia. And while there's never been permanent fresh water here, more than a century of rains have filled them up.
They are unique, really, because there's very few wetlands in Western Australia. There never were very many. A lot of them now have been taken over by farming. Some have been cleared for suburbs. And then you've got others now with climate change that are drying up. And some of the permanent ones become ephemeral wetlands. And then, of course, you've got salinity. A lot of them gone saline. So wetlands are pretty scarce.
They may not be naturally occurring wetlands, but according to Pia Christensen, the birds that come here don't seem to mind. He's monitoring them for the not-for-profit Blackwood Basin Group.
I've been looking here for now 3 years. I just record once a month. I come down and record all the numbers and species. And we've got something like 37 species we've recorded here. Before these wetlands were here, I'd estimate there would be about 6 quite common species that would have occurred here in the sort of in the drainage lines. Was the 27 species have actually come in here all by themselves. They've all just migrated to the area because of the wetlands.
Greenbushes has been a mining town since 1888, when kangaroo shooter and wheelwright William Stinton staked the first claim here. That original lease remains intact today, but the commodity dug up and processed has changed. The Talison mine is the world's biggest producer of lithium minerals and is now in the process of doubling production. The lithium market is booming on the back of global demand for new types of batteries that can store energy more efficiently.
There are 3 products that come out of the mine. Spodumene, which is the lithium ore. Tantalum and tin are also mined and were the primary products in the past. The spodumene ore goes around the world, goes into ceramics and glass industry, and more recently gets processed for the battery markets and other chemical industries.
Mine manager Steve Green says the legal requirements on mining companies to rehabilitate their open cuts has changed considerably since the days of tin prospecting. Talison inherited 24 artificially created water bodies on its 100 square kilometre lease. For the last 4 years, it's been working on a rehabilitation project with the Blackwood Basin Group, which coordinates environmental management for the Blackwood River catchment.
The Basin Group came to us. We saw it as a great opportunity for community engagement. So we've allowed them to focus on how they wanted to change the wetlands, but we've been there to help them as required with resources at stages and in just ensuring that the longer term plans are sustainable.
They're trying to turbocharge nature as it converts the old mining voids into wetlands. Reed beds and other natives are being planted around the shores of the largest lakes.
In terms of plantings, the reed beds, the bomia is the main species that we've been planting in those areas, and we've either planted nursery stock or transplanted fully grown plants, planted over 300,000 stems of those. We've done some 21 hectares of other revegetation around the place with fringing vegetation and more forest species. So that's planted close to 50,000 seedlings.
Brian Chambers is the manager of the Blackwood Basin Group. It used a $1.6 million Commonwealth Government grant to kickstart the project at Schwenke's Dam, the biggest water body on the Taliesin site. The goal was to encourage rare and endangered water birds to the wetlands, as well as to create new passive recreation sites.
It's been driven out of a community desire here in Greenbushes to see more basically environmental assets developed and also tourism assets and recreation assets for the community. So we're working with Taliesin and with the community in as many of the historic mining pits as we can around town here to improve them as wetland habitat for threatened species.
The work also included fish surveys where scientists from Murdoch University found a range of native and introduced species in the 20-hectare dam. Ultimately, the plan is to populate the lakes exclusively with native fish, but in Schwenke's Dam, the introduced species are in control.
There's two introduced species, the gambusia or the mosquito fish and the redfin perch, which are both, well, the gambusia are highly competitive with the native species and the redfin is predatory on the native species. So that's part of the work we're doing at New Zealand Gully, is to work out are there areas over there where we can look at introducing threatened native fish species.
The survey work has now shifted to New Zealand Gully, where scientists Dean Thorburn and James Kelleher are using a 400-watt electrofisher to draw out even the shyest of species.
So we found a range of natives already. Most of our natives are fairly small, so as you've seen, we found a pygmy perch which has been in good numbers here, and we've also found good numbers of marron. We've seen also a galaxid, which is another native, a fast-swimming longer native, which you can see swimming around in small schools. So yeah, we've only been here a little while and we've already got a number of species.
So these are not natural wetlands. How would the fish have got here in the first place?
Yeah, so a lot of the natives are amazing dispersers. From what we can tell, these don't actually connect to any of the main tributaries. Obviously, when you have really, really big winters or really big runs, there might be some connection, but we often find that either people move them or we find that water birds actually shift the fish around as well. They stick to their legs when they fly, and especially gambusia are particularly well known for it.
You guys, your job is to go out and collect. So whatever moves, net it, get it in the water. So we'll have some in the water, some on land, net everything, bring it to Brooke, bring it to Paul, and then we release them. Okay, stay safe, look out for snakes.
The Basin Group has also been conducting invertebrate surveys. Consultant entomologist Paul van der Herk says insects and spiders are good bioindicators for the health of the new wetlands.
Oh, very good. These are great. These are southwest glass, they're shrimps. They're southwest glass shrimps. Mm-hmm. And they're very important for the ecosystem because they're detritivores and they feed on the aquatic plants, the stoneworts, and there's hundreds and hundreds of them. Okay. And they're very good indicators of good water quality because they're quite sensitive to heavy metals. Well done. I think it's a little boy. See how he's got the little boxing gloves up the front? Mm-hmm. And the two little boxing gloves? Mm-hmm. Cool, well done.
So far, the surveys have identified about 1,300 species, and the role of citizen science volunteers has been crucial.
We can sort of work out from the insect species what the successional pathway of the wetland is and whether it's moving towards a more natural situation or whether it's moving towards a more disturbed situation. So the more we learn about these insects through just training citizen scientists, and everyone can identify different coloured insects, and you don't have to be a highly specialised taxonomist to do. It's almost a game of snap to say, well, this insect is different from this one. So if we know that, and we systematically take a list of them through over several years, and we look at the database and we can go, oh, this occurs here and this occurs here, and then the water quality is improving, then we can, even without not having a scientific name, we can still use them as bioindicators of improving habitat. And the citizen scientist is playing a very important role in doing that.
Insects, fish and more native plant species are already attracting more birds to the wetlands. The Basin Group has also installed artificial nesting boxes in treetops to attract rare and endangered cockatoos.
I've always actually thought that ecology is about using what's there. I mean, I'm not a purist. I think that you can actually construct a habitat, or we can reconstruct a habitat, and it's evident here that the mining's been going on for over 100 years, and a lot of the lakes and wetlands that have been formed here have actually just revegetated themselves. Animals and birds and insects and plants have all come in and established themselves.
As chairman of the Blackwood Basin Group, Pia Christensen takes a hands-on approach to the research. For the last 3 years, he's been observing red and white-tailed cockatoos using the lakes. It's early days in a project that he hopes will continue for decades to come.
Just observations on when they're drinking and how often they come here and so on. So every time I do the waterbird surveys, I record the red-tailed black cockatoos as well, or the white-tails if they're here. And so that's just extra data that is coming in. There's not a lot known about them at the moment. But if we ever get one in a box, we'd love to get a radio transmitter on them and get some idea where they move.
The work's ongoing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always ongoing.